EduStat network. I'm Subhas Mahapatra from Delhi University, going to take up the discussion on GS Mead, wherefrom we have left yesterday. After finishing GS Mead, I'll be making a comprehensive analysis about various sociological theories and how different sociologists are looking into social realities in distinctive ways, giving multiple theoretical outlines, methodological foundations to the growth and development of sociology. Yesterday we have made a comparison between Mead and his predecessors. I'll be discussing today how Mead is looking into society in relation to the study of action, self, and mind. First part of my lecture I'll be devoting to the explanation of G.S. Mead on society and how its society is formulated through the selves. How he is looking into selves as dynamic process. Self is not something fixed, and actions manifested by the selves are also not designated, rule bound, and specific. Now let us look into Mead's understanding of how that self develops in human beings. Mead tells the foundation to every society is the basic social organization that is known as family. He is looking at family from two perspectives. Number one, structurally, family is the most smallest unit of social life. And family offers a primary space where individuals do develop an understanding about their self. Family is the most intimate space wherefrom man gets an exposure to interactional relationship. Family is a situation where you get counteractors to negotiate with actors. Family is a situation where you further find out that a person identifies the generalized others and the significant others. A child in family is emulating the behavior of others. He is taking the roles of others. Therefore, associated self is developing from out of family experience. Therefore, without family, societal self is very difficult to evolve. Therefore, in Mead sociology, you find out that family is occupying a special place. So he is looking into the structural space of family, which is instrumental for the growth of self, and that self, when get exposure to other social institutions outside the family, carrying this family experience, how that self is getting engaged in different kinds of joint action in various institutional conditions. Mead also looks at family from a developmental perspective, considering that from out of family, kinship group, tribal organizations develop, clans develop. And clans provide a platform for different selves to develop a sense of unity among themselves, manifesting hostility towards outsiders. he makes an interesting observation about the growth of societies. Unlike evolutionary scholars, he never tells that from family develops civil society, or from civil society develops state, or lower culture evolves into higher culture, passing through the state of middle culture. He never also tells that a magical society is converged into a religious society, which finally evolves into a scientific society. He tells that when a clan-based tribal society is transformed into a modern society, in modern society we find out there are present plurality of selves who are engaged in divergent course of action. While engaged in this divergent course of actions, this plurality of selves go for self-reflexivity. Understand which kind of action is appropriate to which situation. They make plannings, go for deliberations, negotiate with counteractors, and from out of this joint action, by understanding the expectations of each other, through self-introspections, various kinds of institutions potentially develop. He tells modern society is one where an individual is engaged in multiple forms of role-taking. That means one can take the role of an officer in the office. While driving back home, he is playing the role of a driver. When he is going to market, playing the role of a buyer. So different kinds of roles one is systematically taking in case of modern society. Therefore, multiple selves are developing in modern society, whereas the selves are definite and defined in case of clan-based tribal societies. And this multiplicity of self is engaged in multiple forms of communication, in multiple interactional situations. So therefore, various forms of cooperations, distinctive forms of challenges, various forms of projections, anticipations, participations are making modern society so complex and distinctive. He tells that social formations should be understood on the basis of two distinctive criteria. First is, every self is negotiating with the other selves, manifesting various forms of purposive interactional relationship for the gratification of the common goals. So, the common intention to gratify the goals is bringing different actors closer to each other. And each actor in an interactional situation, while manifesting an action, he is going through self-introspection, evaluating whether his action in that particular action situation is appropriate or inappropriate. If it is inappropriate, he is modifying that course of action, revising that action, making plannings, going for other kinds of deliberations. As a result, same person in same interactional situation is manifesting diversified form of action. Therefore, every institutional condition is full of with different kinds of variabilities, novelties, certain degrees of conformities, certain degrees of unanticipated behavioral patterns, Therefore, institutional life of the society, which are the products of varied interactions, are giving a dimension to structured form of social life. Therefore, society is a product of joint action of the people in different interactional situations, driven by various kinds of permutations and combinations. But the basic objective of the actors negotiating with each other in these interactional situations is the pursuance of common objectives or common goals. He further goes on to analyze that gratification of common goals is not just one factor that is bringing interacting individuals or selves closer to each other. Rather, people develop hostility towards others, and that collective persistence of hostility towards others gives rise to a form of unity among the people who constitute a society. When a group of people manifest hostility towards others, it becomes persistent that they must be coming close to each other, developing a sense of belongingness. Therefore, all over the world we have seen that societies are created through the common understanding of association among the people who are the acting individuals. These acting individuals may be on the basis of color, on the basis of religion, on the basis of other kinds of identity, develop a sense of belongingness, and further they manifest a form of hostility towards outsiders to make one society different from another society. Therefore, Mead's understanding of society is based upon the fact that society is the society of selves. And selves means the acting individuals who are conscious of the fact that where they are placed, who are the people surrounding them, in what way they should act, and their action, how being evaluated by the others, and they continuously go for the modification of their actions, planning their actions, they are specifying goals for themselves, retargeting the goals, keeping in mind the normative and cultural provisions of the society, the demands of the structural conditions where they are operating, the anticipation of the fellow beings surrounding them. Therefore, selves negotiating with each other, understanding the requirements of each other, taking the roles of others, make a social life possible. Therefore, human society, in other words, is a society of selves that comes out of the joint action of the minded people. Mead brilliantly tells that we have selves because we are minded. Because mind offers a guideline to the self, and when self is presented in interactional situation, it is also constantly and continuously negotiating with mind. Therefore, mind and self are interacting with each other on a continuous basis, to and fro. Therefore, we have selves because we are minded. We are minded because mind always defines who we are. Therefore, every acting individual, through the application of his mind, he understands who he is, in which position he is located, and through the application of mind, he understands the expectations of others, and also he understands which behavior should be appropriate to which situation. So this mind that is being carried by the individuals, human beings, are so greatly different from the mind of the animals. Mead refuses to accept the idea that mind is a physiological entity, sum total of different neurological elements don't constitute mind. Mind develops through the process of association. Therefore, association or socio-psychological explanation of mind is something unique, distinctive to the writings of G.S. Mead. That is, making sociology a distinctive discipline from that of physiology. He tells mind is a product of association. And how that mind is a product of association, to explain that, he takes the example of socialization. He tells, when a child is born into a family, he is going through the process of socialization in two distinctive stages. One he calls as play stage, and second he calls as game stage. In a play stage, a child is taking up the role of others. A brilliant analysis. You must have seen a child taking the role of mother most of the time when mother is absent. She is putting up the dress of the mother, sari of mother, putting on lipsticks, bangles, and standing in front of the mirror. And while standing in front of the mirror, she is asking this question to herself: how good I look at the role of mother. Mead interestingly tells that when the child is taking the role of the mother, she is engaged in communicating with herself. She is using symbols, gestures, keeping her fingers on the chin, making different kinds of projections, and continuously going for self-evaluation. So, child is constantly looking into how others are playing their roles and learning from out of their experience. A child is taking the role of others, and that is socializing him to undertake same kind of role at a future date in a very systematic manner. When the child is communicating with herself about how good or bad, she is looking in the mother's role. She is getting a chance to go for modification. Modification means she is amending her behavior, changing her behavior, adding novelty into her behavior. For example, mother may not be primarily putting a veil at any point of time. She may have seen that in the television. She is adding up new elements into that role, putting on a lot of jewelries, talking to herself, making modifications in the behavior, ensuring that her final presentation of mother's role becomes a perfected kind of role. In many situations, you must have seen the children participating in fancy dress competition in the schools. This is another kind of role presentation where a child is taking the role of others. The child is memorizing the dialogues of that particular self whose role he is primarily playing. And the child makes meticulous presentation of that person's behavior. When the child is getting appreciated for this behavior, the child develops confidence. But the problem here is that child's mind not being so greatly developed, child cannot take multiple roles of others at one point of time. Therefore, child takes the roles of others in a sequence. Today she is playing the role of mother, getting ready for a party. Tomorrow she is taking the role of mother while preparing family dinner. Then she may be taking up the role of a teacher next day. But on a continuous basis, her self is not being fully developed. She cannot take a series of roles on a continuous basis. But the process of role taking starts during childhood stage. And that role taking as a form of experience, one learns from out of family. Therefore, family injects sociability into the mind of the child, giving foundation to the formation of society, offering a strong foundation to the space where child can jump into after getting into higher age and manifest joint action to make social institutions, to make social groups absolutely possible. Then Mead goes on to say that second stage of socialization is a game stage where child is much more primarily adaptive to the process of association. He tells that during game stage, a child plays different kinds of role in a continuous manner. When a child is developing in terms of age, he has identified from within the family two bodies of people. One are the significant others, and the others are the generalized others. Significant others are they to whom one appreciates, admires. They become ideal to a person, and a person looks into their behavioral patterns in a systematic manner and learn from out of their experience and try to be like them when he is growing up in age. Significant others are the people, those who are surrounding primarily self, carrying certain kind of expectation from the self, and self is manifesting a kind of action respecting to, understanding to the expectations of the people surrounding him. And these people surrounding the self in an action situation are known as generalized others. In simple terms, generalized others are the people who are ordinary. We interact with them on regular basis, and while interacting with them, we greatly carry elements from the significant others, trying our best to manifest a perfected role in that situation. Therefore, a child in the family situation, sometimes playing the role of the father, fetching grocery from the market. He is becoming extremely hospitable when the guests are coming to family, when the parents are not at home. He is going to study table and preparing his homework for the school. Therefore, on a continuous basis, a child is putting himself into different situations and in a very systematic manner playing his or her roles, taking the role of others. So therefore, this capability of taking the roles of others offers a strong foundation to social life. Therefore, society is nothing but a product of acting selves who know how to take the role of others in different situations. Therefore, Mead is differing from his predecessors, those who carry a stereotypical understanding of social life. Most of the functionalists, if you look into, they say society is the product of different kinds of structures which are fixed in character, like family, kinship, religion, political system. They are law-bound institutions present in society, and these law-bound institutions are greatly engaged in integrative relationship with each other. mutual affiliation with each other. As a result of their communication, integration, adaptability, there is a kind of persistence and continuity present in social life. But Mead indicates that social life should not be understood, number one, in terms of hopeless entities, that is, individuals, voluntarily stand committed to the will of conscience collective, as Durkheim spelled it out. Individuals are not the entities who are lifeless, objectified, and these individuals don't simply fit into the commands of the society, its rules, its laws, its prescriptions. Rather, individuals, through the presentation of their self, they make interactional situations possible, and these interactional situations give meaning and substance to institutions, and these interacting selves present in different institutional conditions offer foundation to the growth of social life. Therefore, society itself is a dynamic process, because self is a continuous process of evolution. Selves are not something fixed. We'll be taking up this discussion, how selves are not continuous in character after a point of time. But Mead's understanding of society is the society that is greatly dynamic in character, because selves make society and selves are the products of society. This point one should be remembering very carefully, because self is the product of society and society is the product of self. Therefore, centrality to our understanding of society is self itself. Look at this thing. How society produces self. Every society is having a body of norms, values, customs, rules, and different ways of identifying objects, which through the process of socialization gets into the mind of the individual. I was discussing with you yesterday. Things exist prior to their objectification, but things are converted into objects through the application of mind. And mind is explaining things in terms of objects based upon the cultural context. Let me just give you one example here. Stones are stones, but applying this mind in the context like India, we consider these stones are the manifestation of various kinds of gods. So therefore, mind is converting things into objects, and that piece of stone located in the temple, which is a kind of divine incarnation, that we learn through our cultural experience. Visiting temple regularly, we are told that in this temple, the pieces of stones located at different spaces do carry divine potentials. Therefore, mind carries this knowledge, cultural knowledge, and carrying this cultural knowledge, it tells the self to bow down its head in front of a piece of stone. So therefore, society is primarily giving certain kind of knowledge, from out of which self becomes conscious about religion. Self becomes conscious of the fact that a piece of stone is not a piece of stone, rather it is having divine incarnation to it, divine embodiment to it. In a brilliant manner, one can relate Durkheim's study of totemism here, how society makes selves. Then I'll be explaining how self is presenting society. Durkheim tells that in case of Australian Aborigines, people believe that they have descended from different kinds of animals. Some say that they have descended from crocodiles, others say they have descended from rabbit, some think they have descended from cobras. So this is a culturally constructed knowledge that cobra or crocodile is the founder of our clan. And this cultural knowledge, through the process of socialization, is pushed into the mind of the people. So carrying this kind of cultural knowledge that we descended from crocodiles, all these selves that individual persons carry, on a specific day, they participate in totemic ritual ceremony. They sing together, they dance together. Through this common singing, common dancing, they develop a sense of unity among themselves. They consider that kind of action, joint action, as befitting to that particular situation. Therefore, everybody manifests same kind of joint action, from out of which a totemic ceremony develops. Therefore, selves are the products of society, because selves are told by the society that these are the situations where we should be manifesting a standardized form of behavior. In case of India, when you see the elderly people, your culture tells that you should be bowing down your head in front of these people. In totemic ceremony, it is told to the people, in Australian Aborigines, they should be coming together, centering around their totemic creature. They should sing, they should dance, they should eat together. In Karwa Chauth, it is being told by the culture to the different kinds of reflexive selves that one should be decorating themselves, going for good clothes, keeping a fast. Therefore, society is primarily giving a direction to self. And self is also manifesting different kinds of acts, make society possible. Therefore, Indian society is the product of the selves that individual actors in Indian society, they present and represent in different joint action situations. Therefore, every society is definitely the product of the selves. Therefore, self and society are continuously engaged in a form of dialogue with each other. He goes on to say that the self is not something static, it's not something fixed. That self goes through the process of dynamic evolution. As I have discussed with you yesterday, self has got two different kinds of components. One is I and other is me. They are strongly negotiating with each other. And ultimately, a course of action is determined and spelled out. So that capability of presenting self through the negotiation between I and me, one is obtaining through the process of socialization, and foundation to socialization is family itself. Therefore, if you look into the entire writings of G.S. Mead, the centrality to his sociological understanding of society is that society is a product of self, and self is evolving from out of socialization process, and foundation to that socialization is family itself. He makes another interesting observation about social control. I should be taking it off. You know, most of the sociologists, while speaking about socialization, they speak of formal mechanisms of socialization and informal mechanisms of socialization. In formal mechanism of socialization, they keep discussing about law, they keep discussing about religion, and informal mechanism of socialization, they discuss in terms of peer group, interpersonal communication, and so on. Mead tells that the potential way of enforcing social control is not external to self. Self-criticism is a form of social control. It's a brilliant understanding. When somebody is manifesting a kind of action in a given situation, he is making a judgment that whether that action is appropriate or inappropriate, adequate or inadequate, whether that action is pleasing the people, those who are surrounding him, or it's hurting the sentiment of others. Therefore, before presenting a kind of role in an action situation, an actor himself goes for deliberation, and that's a constant and continuous deliberation of his act, whether he is doing good, justifiable act, or he is not doing something that can make himself happy and proud of. So that constant churning of one's behavior, evaluation of the appropriateness of that behavior, whether that behavior is adequate in ethical standards or not, legal standards or not, from the standpoint of the perception of others, whether that behavior is appreciable or not. So this kind of constant evaluation is compelling an actor to make necessary modifications in his behavior. And not only that, when someone is doing something which is not culturally endorsed, legally defined, like somebody is shouting at his parents, immediately a sense of frustration appears. Immediately a sense of repentance appears in his heart. And that becomes so possible because every self is a socialized self. Therefore, a socialized self carries a mind. It understands, evaluates what is the demand of the situation and evaluates his action on the basis of that cultural standard, on the basis of that legitimate standard to measure whether this action is appropriate or not. Therefore, every individual actor, while going for self-introspection, while going for self-criticism, he is modifying his course of action and manifesting and presenting a kind of action that is appreciated by others, befitting to the expectations of others. That is how social life is being persisting and subjected to continuity. He is not a scholar who considers that society is a story of harmony and society is a story of continuity. Also, he is not a scholar who tells that social change is a product of revolution. His sociology is mostly a realistic sociology. And being it is a realistic sociology, he tells that social change is a continuous process. And how that change takes place in social life, to understand that, he indicates that a self is bringing novelty into interactional situation, new projections, new directions, new anticipations are present in interactional situations. When a self is presenting itself in an interactional situation, always it is not able to present the best of behavior that can be appreciated by the others, those who are surrounding him. So therefore, it provides lot of chance, scope for self-correction, modification, amendment. Therefore, nothing can be called as a perfected condition or a perfected society, which are the products of perfected behavior. That brings into the question of sociology of Emile Durkheim. Durkheim tells that in most of the situation, individuals conform to conscience collective. That is how perfected behavior comes into prominence. And society becomes a story of persistence and continuity. Mead doesn't agree with that. Mead tells society is not a story of perfection. Rather, society evolves because selves are adapting to environment differently at different points of time, and different selves negotiate with the same environment in distinctive ways. Therefore, society is a product of different kinds of selves and how they are adapting to different kinds of environment. You see, it's a very brilliant analysis in this sense. In today's context, there are some people, those who are going for deforestation for petty economic gains. Also, there are people, those who are talking about environmental protection. Therefore, there are two different bodies of selves present who are engaged in dialectical relationship with each other. One talks about protection of forest, and other talks about destruction of forest for private gains. Therefore, these two bodies of people presenting two distinctive forms of selves are making Indian society. So therefore, within a particular society, we don't find out all individual selves. They are reflecting to, responding to the conscience collective in identical manner. Therefore, the whole idea of harmony, idea of integration, idea of interdependency, glorified by the functionalist, is greatly being questioned by G.H. Mead. If one looks into Mead's understanding of self, I gave some reference about it yesterday, just bringing an outline of his understanding of self today. Then through that, I'll be establishing a connectivity between action, interaction, joint action, and society. So therefore, how from microscopic structure he is looking into macroscopic nature of society. He tells that every self carries capacity of presenting action. Therefore, human beings do have reflexive self and animals do have non-reflexive self. When the reflexive self is presenting itself in terms of action, we are using significant gestures. Significant gestures are language, signs, other kinds of symbols, the meaning of which are perfectly communicated to the interacting individuals. Therefore, self is presenting a kind of action through different kinds of reflexive gestures, language, and symbols, which are appropriately understood by actor and the counteractors. These reflexive symbols are used through the application of mind by understanding the demands of the situation, which is so absent in case of animal society. Therefore, human beings carry a mind, and that mind is also greatly reflexive in character, that what animals don't primarily carry. Therefore, animals don't constitute a society that is being constituted by human beings, living human beings. Mind is reflexive in this sense. I can make a list of them. Because mind helps an individual to understand a definite situation. Through the application of mind, we understand a given situation. Applying mind, we make a distinction between family and market, friends from enemies, library to primarily a sports club. Therefore, mind makes distinction between this space. Mind helps us to make distinction between the people. And mind gives us sufficient knowledge about who we are. I am a teacher, my mind tells me. In the classroom, my mind tells me I am a teacher. But in the market, my mind tells me I am not a teacher. I cannot give a big moral lecture to the shopkeeper from whom I am buying certain commodities. Therefore, mind instructs me time and again that I am a person playing different kinds of roles in different situations. Therefore, mind tells me that situational conditions being different, I should be using different kinds of symbolic gestures like language, signs, symbols in different ways. When I am meeting my students, my mind tells me, wish them, good morning children, good morning students, how are you? But I cannot enter into the marketplace and use same language to a shopkeeper. I will tell him, what is the cost of these objects or commodities? Therefore, being we are minded, therefore, number one, we identify who you are, who we are, and second, how one situation is greatly different from another situation, and how in distinctive situation we have different status, therefore we are supposed to play different kinds of roles. Mind is also a storehouse of norms, values, customs, and laws. So mind is carrying these elements and reminds us on a continuous basis what is legitimate, what is normatively prescriptive for us in different kinds of action situations. Therefore, since we are minded, therefore we know in which situation we should be behaving in what particular direction. Therefore, it becomes easier for us to negotiate with the counteractors effectively because mind always gives us directions, defining us the situation, explaining us the expectations of others, indicating which roles are appropriate, and directing our course of action to fulfill the expectations of counteractors. Therefore, because I am minded, I play different kinds of roles in school, in family, in marketplace, and like me, others are also playing same kind of roles, fulfilling the expectations of others. Therefore, market as an institution, school as an institution, family as an institution, social club as institutions develop to make social life possible. Therefore, we are able to present ourselves effectively in different role situations, understanding our status because we are minded. Also, mind plays a significant role in reminding us about historicity. Mind being a storehouse of culture, it directs us how people prior to us have negotiated with same situation in distinctive manner or in identical manner. Therefore, keeping this direction of mind in our consciousness, we develop a kind of behavioral pattern that is somehow connected to historicity, though not absolutely conforming to historicity and heredity. And mind is so reflexive in character that mind gives us certain kind of stimulus, telling us which kind of gesture, which kind of language, which kind of symbols are required in which situation. When these symbols and gestures are not getting positive endorsement, appreciation from others, mind sharply reacts and tells us to change them. Therefore, self develops negotiating with mind on a continuous basis. And being we are minded, therefore, we primarily target our goals, understand the expectations of others, present our roles in an effective manner, keep changing these roles, and different kinds of social situation evolves on a continuous basis. Therefore, mind is offering a paradigm, a guidelines for the presentation of self in everyday life of man. Therefore, mind makes a human being different from animal, and minds of the actors, reflexive mind of the actors, give them an outline to present different kinds of roles in different dynamic situations from out of which social life evolves. It is very important to understand that mind is classifying objects, and this is very important element of Mead's sociology. I gave you some reference about object yesterday, and one need to understand the concept of object effectively to explain, analyze Mead's understanding of mind, self and society. He tells that social life are full of with things, and through the application of mind, these things are converted into objects and we act upon them. Acting upon the things, we transform the things into objects. When objects he talks about, it means things are converged into object through the application of mind. And through this application of mind, converting things into objects, we explain these objects to each other, act and react upon the objects in distinctive ways, using communication through the application of language. It's a very interesting thing. Tomato is a vegetable, but applying this mind, some people may be using this tomato as a missile in a public platform when they are unhappy with the lecture or the deliberation of a leader or a priest. Therefore, tomato is a vegetable, but applying mind, people are using tomato as a missile. Applying this mind, people are understanding a piece of stone as God. Applying this mind, people develop an understanding about democracy. Therefore, things exist as they are. But applying our mind, we convert these things into object in different ways and collectively acting upon this. And that gives rise to the progress of society and progress of knowledge. It's a very brilliant understanding of G.S. Mead. Look at this thing. Democracy, equality, liberty, happiness. So these concepts are the products of mind. Applying our mind, individual and collective, we develop these ideas. And we are acting upon these ideas. While acting upon these ideas, we manifest cooperation with each other. We develop a kind of mutual relationship with each other. So this cooperation, mutual relationship, is taking our political order in the direction of progress. Likewise, capitalism is a kind of object. And to ensure that capitalism deliver goods, people go for enterprise, they go for complex form of division of labor. We are able to act upon these ideas, which are now converted into objects through mutual cooperation, through the use of language. As a result, one economy is replaced by another economy. One political order is replaced by another political order. Therefore, Mead brilliantly tells that objects are not things. People can be object. Suppose my father, I am objectifying a person. That person in reality is just a human being. But applying my mind, I consider that person as my father. Therefore, mind converts things into objects. We make a distinction between environmentalist and mercantilist, applying our mind. Therefore, mind is able to identify people differently from each other, religious communities differently from each other, make one political ideology different from political ideology, and that objectification of things or converting things into objects are providing a platform to go for a definite course of action. Therefore, in every society, one will be finding out people look at objects in a definite manner. So, the people looking at the same object in a definite manner carry common kind of knowledge, come closer to each other, develop a harmonic relationship, from out of which social institutions, social groups make an appearance. I told you yesterday, and also repeating that today, that people's interrelationship with the objects may not be necessarily identical. And that brings in dynamism into social life. This is being clearly spelled out by G.S. Mead when he tells that minds react to the object in distinctive manner, for which novelty enters into social life, dynamism enters into social life. A person who is looking at a piece of stone as sacred may be the same person tomorrow questioning to the sacredness of that object. And questioning to sacredness of that object, he may be developing an alternative ideas. As a result, a religion is being questioned by a new kind of ideology, new kind of consciousness, new sects develop, new cults make appearance. Therefore, people react to primarily same object identically at one point of time, differently at another point of time. A man who is too happy with that objectification of stone as God may be going for rituals every day. But when a personal mishappening is taking place, the same person may be questioning to the divinity of God. He may be, scolding the God that God is unkind, God is unhelpful, God is greedy in different ways. Therefore, conformity to religion appears the way criticism to religion appears. Therefore, self is presenting itself towards the objects in dynamic and divergent ways. That is how social life is greatly full of with different kinds of permutations and combinations. Therefore, a society is not a stereotypical organization produced and reproduced in identical forms. Rather, selves make society, and divergent presentation of self induces dynamism into social life. Therefore, one should study society not in terms of institutions, not in terms of structure. Rather, centrality to the study of society is the presentation of self that is taking place in social life. If one looks into that presentation of self, one must have to understand that self is having two components present within itself. That also I discussed with you yesterday. One is I part of the self, another is the me part of the self. I part of the self is extremely creative, imaginative, speculative. And me part of the self is highly judgmental. It is normative. So, I part of the self make appearance at the time of exigencies. emergencies, crises, confusion, where all the roads are closed to take an effective decision. I comes into prominence, gives a new direction to the presentation of self, offer a new guidelines to the presentation of action. Because I is very innovative, creative, and most of the time when change takes place, I is bringing novelty into the course of action. To its contrast, me is very judgmental. Me always reminds that who the self is, what is his status, who are the people surrounding him, what is the normatively prescriptive behavior for self. Therefore, when me is talking about a definite form of behavior befitting to the situation, understanding the expectations of others, conforming to culture, to its contrast, I is innovative, it is creative, it is speculative, it is judgmental, it brings in novelty into the discourses of social life. Therefore, before the presentation of self in an action situation, I and me, they are constantly engaged in dialogue with each other. And ultimately, a course of action is being primarily presented, and a given form of behavior, given form of action is presented in the action situation. In some situation, delayed action may be manifested, but the delayed action is not a form of abnormality. The dialogue between the both are persisting, so therefore delayed action is taking place. So Mead tells the presentation of self is taking place in continuous basis through the mutual dialogue between I and me, and for this dialogue, many times, self is going for self-evaluation. He tells, as I told you yesterday, that self is both a subject and also an object. Subject because it can make planning, it can make deliberations, it can identify a course of action, and object because it carries capability in understanding whether actions are appropriate, actions are totally befitting to the situations or not. In a nutshell, we can say that Mead's understanding of society as the society of selves. Selves are dynamic in character, negotiating between I and me is a brilliant understanding of having an interface between individual, mind, self, society, which are coordinated through the use of symbolic gesture, that is language. Therefore, G.S. Mead is giving a new dimension to sociological inquiry, that is giving importance on the presentation of self as the essentiality of social life, and that is subsequently taken up by symbolic interactional theorists. Therefore, Mead offers a new guideline to sociological inquiry departing from his predecessors. Thank you very much.